The morning light and a gentle breeze pass through the window. A girl puts her hand on her face, trying to cover it. Looking at the curtains, the young girl thinks it was time for her morning ritual, starting with the morning selfie. Smiling, she strikes a pose, and holding the phone with her foot, she takes the picture. The excited young girl sits down and posts the photo she just took on her social media. She puts the phone on the bedside table. Twisting and clasping her hands, the girl starts to count. In less than 3 seconds, her phone starts vibrating like crazy. When she turns on the screen, several people had commented in that short amount of time. The girl felt good about it. On her phone, her account had thousands of followers. Her name was Yang Hiji. She was the kind of person that, when passing by, many people looked at in admiration, believing that the young girl was a goddess of social media. Yang sat excitedly while reading the comments. She is surprised by what she sees. A comment saying that the photo looked more like it had been taken by her boyfriend than a selfie. That hit her hard. Leaving the room, Yang hears someone talking to her. The person asks if she had been dumped again. Annoyed, the protagonist explains that it hadn't happened. Wearing a facial mask, her mother says that God knew her daughter didn't inherit that from her. The woman continues, telling her husband to say goodbye to his grandchildren because they had raised a spinster, while a giant man wearing a pink apron stood next to his daughter. The words still echoed in Yang's mind. She thinks that it was okay. It wasn't like she had never had boys' attention before. The problem was that she always got ghosted right after the first date. The girl wondered why that was. Looking at her phone, she reads a conversation that never got a reply, questioning herself about the reason she never got a boyfriend. Memories arise in her mind, wondering if it was because she ate all the popcorn at the movies, or if the reason was her talent at karaoke, although that last one was probably just her own delusion. In the end, she didn't come to any answer. Her mood went down while her parents watched. Yang says that all this stress made her want to eat gummy bears and that she was leaving. That was just the name of a candy the young girl liked to eat at night. Going to a convenience store, she notices the shelf was empty. Shocked, the girl questions where her precious candies had gone, throwing open the door of another store, only to realize right after that they were out of stock there too. She collapses, freaking out internally. Approaching a clerk, the girl asks if they hadn't restocked the order of gummy bears Carefree. The man replies that that's exactly it. The stock was gone. Coming closer, Yang asks him to check. Annoyed, the boy repeats that it's out of stock, trying to end the conversation. The young girl almost gets angry but turns away, sad and desperate, thinking those candies were the only way to comfort her. And even on a day like this, she was devastated. Noticing something, the protagonist suddenly turns around and spots right in the middle of the shelf a package of her favorite candy. Pointing, she yells at the clerk, asking what that was if not the candy she had just asked him for. The man gets startled, but right after says those were reserved Yang questions who would reserve gummy bears. And to her stress, the man only answers that, obviously, someone had done so. The young girl points out that they couldn't reserve things like that, asking if they could stop customers from buying something that way. Meanwhile, a boy enters the store. He sees the protagonist arguing with the clerk. The girl was saying that she was fed up with all this, and that since she got there first, he should sell it to her. Already tired of the conversation, the man says that finally he had arrived, saying that the argument with the girl was all his. Turning around, Yang finally notices the young man. Her first reaction is to find him handsome, but she forces herself to focus on her mission. The protagonist asks the boy how he would explain this theft. The boy doesn't understand what the girl meant. The clerk walks past them and throws his vest away, saying he had no idea what she meant either, telling him to solve it because he was quitting. His patience had run out, and the girl in front of him now was his problem. Turning, the young man is speechless while the protagonist stares at him. He thinks what to do for a second, and right after decides to ignore her, looking at the floor. Seeing him grab the candies, Yang, laughing, says that he was the kind of person who stole gummy bears from desperate customers. She continues, saying that no one had the right to grab something just because they worked there, since she had arrived first. The man points out that he had already paid in advance. The girl doesn't understand at first, but the young man says he paid last night. He had only forgotten the package there and hadn't reserved it. Yang thinks that wasn't what the man had told her. Finally, the boy pulls out the receipt. Surprised, Yang thinks that the employee made her look like an idiot. The young man explains that since they had all been sold, if she wasn't going to buy anything else, he could probably start working, if the girl didn't mind. Still surprised, the protagonist asks if he could sell the package, willing to pay double or triple the price. The employee asks if she knows that what she's committing now is called harassment. Swallowing hard, she repeats, still not fully understanding. The young man explains that he would report this. Then, pulling out the phone, saying he will call the police already running. The girl asks while shouting if he was being serious. Yang tries to grab his phone but ends up losing her balance. And before she realizes, she is right on top of him. Surprised by this, she begins to blush. Embarrassed, their faces so close they almost touched. But she notices the candy package sticking out of his coat pocket, and in a sneaky move, she tries to grab them. However, the man turns and Yang falls hard to the floor. The boy calls her a nuisance, which makes her irritated, but he explains that if she didn't leave now, he would still file the report. Getting up, the protagonist says she was already leaving, running out of the store. But as soon as she steps outside, the young girl feels small white flakes falling and wonders if it was snow. But when a little touches her tongue, she tastes something extremely salty, questioning what the hell was happening. Turning around, Yang sees the employee throwing something in his hand while holding a bag of salt with a sticker that read, "Nuisance Remover." Annoyed, she walks away, shouting that she would never come back to that place. Waving, the young man hoped exactly for that. In her apartment, several packages of gummy bears were scattered everywhere. Yang ate fervently, feeling more relaxed. Her stress bar went down, unlike the diabetes bar. When she was about to eat the next one, the girl notices something. In the gummy bear, she sees the guy from earlier, and hears the bear saying he would report her and reserve a place in prison for her. Annoyed, Yang eats the bear with everything. The protagonist looks at her hands, questioning herself, and thinks that this was huge. In the middle of the night, her parents wake up surprised by a scream. The next day, the young man was leaving a building, saying he was going to say goodbye to someone. He ran for quite a while, and opening a door, the boy asks if he was a little late, calling the child in front of him, Hyesung. The child complains, pointing out that he had promised not to arrive late today. The man apologizes, but the child continues, saying that he had also forgotten his gummy bears the other day. The way things were going, he wasn't liking him much in the last few days. A bit awkward, the young man says he hadn't forgotten today, and brought the candy Hyesung. Happily says that since he is a good person, he will let him off this time. The boy thanks him, but explains that they will be late and that's why they have to run. The two walk together for a while. The young man notices a family leaving another child with a school employee, the parents asking the son to behave and listen to the teachers. The child next to him watched quietly. He notices that his collar was turned up. Adjusting it, the young man asks what day it is today. Hyesung answers that it is another day of bravery. Smiling, he agrees. The boy runs toward the daycare. He watches for a while but soon realizes that he has to run to elsewhere. Yang's father twisted, saying that he probably had eaten something that upset his stomach yesterday. The man grabbed the doorknob but it wouldn't turn. From inside the bathroom, the protagonist says she was busy. And while her father was dying outside, she was taking a relaxing bath, listening to music. Already in the city, Yang was dressed up and excited for her day. Looking at her phone, she thinks who would imagine that an Instagram star would invite her on a date. Distracted, the girl was smiling in anticipation. Someone taps her back, and turning around surprised, she sees the young man, thinking that he also looked handsome in person. In a restaurant, the young man from earlier worked, while several women around found him attractive. Yang and the famous one who invited her out sit down. She thinks that things seemed to flow this time. Something was different. At a table in the back, two young women wonder if it was really Yang, and the boy called Haonime Park at the table, gossiping about them going out on a date. The protagonist is happy to be recognized like this. Park asks her out and she immediately accepts entering the building. They are greeted by an attendant. Both are surprised to meet again. Yang calling him an idiot, and he replies, calling her a nuisance. She is shocked to realize that the boy also worked here. However, her companion questions why she was called a nuisance. Agitated, she insists not to worry about it and pulls him to go, leaving the attendant behind. Already in the karaoke room, Yang thinks that this was bothering her, probably thinking about what happened earlier. Meanwhile, Park was singing alone. Anyway, she thinks she could just sing something. However, seeing the songs, the girl thinks that if you go to karaoke, you need to sing Gangnam Style. But today was not the day for that, and Jinjinjara was not an option either, while trying to control her desire to sing those completely random songs. The boy approaches and says that he is very happy that they met today, and asks if now that they are closer, he could be a little more casual, which she agrees to. Park explains that even though it was their first date, they really could understand each other, and begins talking about her, leaving her with expectations. He continues, pointing out that Yang was a person very much on his level. That surprises her. Not quite understanding if it was a compliment or not, she questions him about it. Park explains that when you go out with other celebrities in person, it's only for appearances. And in the end, her follower count was very similar to his, just a little lower. The last comment bothers her a little. Mentally, Yang questions herself if Park thought she really agreed with everything he had just said. Joking, the boy says he wants to see if her singing skills are also close to his, and says that when he comes back from the bathroom, she should already have chosen what she was going to sing. The young girl forces a laugh and agrees. Leaving the room, Park comes face to face with the attendant from earlier. They exchange looks and Park turns away annoyed, leaving the employee not understanding anything. A girl arrives calling him. Still in the room, Yang takes off her heels, realizing that her feet were really hurting. Stretching. She says that her stomach was in the same situation. The protagonist remembers that she still hadn't taken her selfie of the day because she had been too excited with everything that happened. Yang is happy to see the comments complaining about her absence, feeling important. Looking up, she realizes that the karaoke light is totally perfect for a killer selfie, looking behind the door to make sure no one was coming, and finally takes a picture. Analyzing, the girl thinks she didn't like it much. She points out that she needed to take it with her feet to really find them good, and looking at her foot, she questions if she should, but instantly denies it. She couldn't do that where she was now. Hesitating, the girl ends up giving in, thinking that if she is quick, there would be no problem in taking just one photo. As fast as she can, she adjusts her phone and positions herself for the picture. But at the moment the photo is taken, she hears a noise beside her and, shocked, she realizes that the attendant from earlier had opened the door. While the young girl screamed in shame internally, someone nearby says that this was the wrong room. And still in the embarrassing pose, Yang hears a camera click. The girl had taken a picture of her in this embarrassing position, and Park had just arrived. Already freaking out, Yang is paralyzed in place and not knowing what to say, Park makes the excuse that he needed to do something urgent and simply turns around to leave. The girl also walks away, laughing. When she was about to show the photo to her friend, a hand pushes the door. An irritated Yang appears. She asks the girl to delete the photo she just took, Yang repeats. But the young girl retorts, asking if she happened to be her boss to give orders like that. The girl pushes the protagonist and replies that if she really wanted the photo deleted, she would have to pay 50,000 won for it. Yang is incredulous at the amount she continues, explaining that if she didn't want to accept, she could very well find out that life is not as easy as she thinks. Laughing, her friend asks, "What the hell was that?" Yang starts to get nervous, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, the attendant appears and enters the room, opening the door. He looks at the young girl who had taken the photo. Meanwhile, Yang was watching him without reaction. Then, the boy explains that taking photos of someone without permission could result in a 5-year prison sentence, or a fine of 1 million won. He turns the phone, showing the article that said that the girl asks what he wanted. The young man explains that this was a police matter, since she did exactly what the article said. Scared, the girl explains that she will delete it immediately. Yang thinks that apparently reporting people is his habit. The young girl shows the phone while deleting the photo. Sighing, the attendant asks for her phone, which she does, somewhat hesitant. The young man goes to the recently deleted items and erases it. Yang realizes that the boy was quite meticulous in the end. Handing back the phone, he explains that they could go now. The girl curses, already stressed with the whole situation, even though she herself had caused all of it. Her friend says that she still had remaining time and that she shouldn't leave her alone there. Meanwhile, the girl just walked out without listening. Both were left without reaction seeing all that. Covering her face, Yang thinks that all of this was very embarrassing. The attendant apologizes, explaining that he shouldn't open the door without knocking like that. He continues, pointing out that he had no idea he would find someone doing that with their feet. Yang gets irritated hearing this. Turning, the protagonist says that nothing good happens when he is involved, asking if the young man knew that he says he felt bad for opening the door and all, but that he had no idea someone was doing something like that inside the room, questioning if he could even imagine seeing someone doing that with their feet. She tries to cover it up, saying she was just tapping with her toes. It turns out there were several people behind them watching and listening to everything. Yang is surprised by the number of spectators they managed to gather in such a short time. Turning, she says whatever, but that from now on she would avoid him, telling him to never see each other in life again. When the young man turned, the girl had already left, walking back to work. He grumbles, complaining about all this nuisance. However, he noticed something in his sight. There was an earring lying on the ground. Already at home, Yang checks on her phone if the girl from earlier had somehow managed to post that photo. Sighing in relief when she saw she hadn't, rolling on the bed, she is surprised by something. Seeing a photo of Park on a date, she laughs, mocking the fact that he said he had something urgent to do. Yang curses, saying she would dump him first anyway, not even seeming like the same person who thought she had found her perfect match earlier. Already panting, the girl states that she has no reason to be humiliated like this. All of this happening just because an idiot had opened the door. Kicking around on the bed like a child, she says she is irritated, then shouting that she will not let this go. Elsewhere, the young man feels something strange. A child asks if something was wrong. He explains that it was nothing. His ear just suddenly itched. Excited, Hisung asks if he could clean them, telling him that last time he pulled out a huge piece of wax. The young man tells him to be quiet and close his eyes, saying that Sarah would be disappointed if he arrived late again tomorrow. The boy explains that Sarah still liked him, even if he arrived late more than 100 times, because he heard that if someone really likes another person, they will manage to see even the bad side with a good view. His brother laughs at his innocent view of the world and notices in the corner a picture frame of his family. The boy asks if he had said goodnight to his parents. The boy replies that he did earlier, while the child slept. The young man was holding a letter in his hands, seeming to be a bill for something. He is thoughtful, but soon grabs the coat that was beside him, accidentally dropping the earring that was in his pocket. The boy picked it up, not really knowing what to do with it. Soon, it dawns on him that he should iron his uniform elsewhere someone else was ironing. While his wife slept, Yang's father was doing that. He wore pajamas, totally inconsistent with his build. But right after he was holding a suit, arriving in the living room, the man comes across his daughter screaming and training. Yang was shouting nonsense, saying that an incident like that was nothing compared to dieting that makes you vomit blood. Despite the intensity, she soon gives up, feeling a lot of stomach pain from the exercise. Fallen on the floor, a shadow approaches. Her father appears above, affectionately calling her a steamed bun, then asking why she was exercising like that right on her first day of school. Embarrassed, Yang yells that she already told him to stop calling her that. The man argues, saying that it's very cute to do so, which makes her extremely irritated. Her father ignores it, then saying that since it's her first day in high school, she might as well get a nice boyfriend, or even fall in love at first sight. Yang questions if they were really having this conversation. The man asks what's wrong with having a crush, pointing out that all relationships start with only one side interested. Even her parents' marriage had started like that. The girl complains, asking if he knew why the word crush was called that. Her father answers no. The protagonist tries to explain that they call it that because just like her father's eyes, butt, and chest, it was called a crush because before you even notice, it's crushing you with your own feelings. And for that reason, she wouldn't have a crush on anyone. Instead, the girl had decided she would find her first boyfriend on her own. Several students were walking among them. Yang was going to her first day of school with a smile on her face. In her mind, she thought that she would no longer wait for anyone to ask her out. Instead, she would actively look, and this year she would find the perfect guy for her. She was determined to have the kind of dating experience that makes everyone around jealous. While she was creating a scenario totally detached from reality in her mind, a couple nearby noticed who she was, saying they were probably in the same school. Embarrassed, the protagonist scolds herself for almost showing an unpleasant side of hers in public. She blushes quickly, but goes back to moving forward. Her day had only just begun. Already in the classroom, several students talked among themselves, probably chatting after the vacation time. In the back of the class, someone had their head down, sleeping. Meanwhile, a person approaches, calling him and touching his shoulder. The young man raises his head. The boy who called him asked if his name was Kisung from Horyong Elementary School. The young man goes back to sleep, but the red-haired boy continues, stating that it was really him, then questioning if he remembered him, since they had been in 5th grade together. The boy tries to remind him of when they played together and all, but the other didn't even react. Opening the door, Yang arrives in the same room. Everyone turned to look at her, and mentally she realizes that everyone is staring too much. The red-haired boy approaches, asking if she was Hyeji Yang, pointing out that she was super famous on Instagram. Half embarrassed, the girl says she's not that famous. Another student asks what Chihuahuan was doing, suddenly moving like that. The boy yells that he didn't do anything, which only encourages the others to tease his exaggerated reaction. The students apologize to Yang for the inconvenience while leaving the boy embarrassed. However, the protagonist only thought that there wasn't any nice place to sit. She approaches the student, asking if she could sit beside him since it was empty. The person turns, removing their earphone, apparently not having understood very well. Yang blushes for a moment, questioning herself if it was a guy or a girl, but regardless, it was undeniably attractive. She then says that she asked if she could sit there. The person replies yes. The protagonist thinks that everyone was being very distant. Several students were chatting while class hadn't started yet. Even so, no one went to talk to her. Still, you could hear several people talking about her in the background. The girl was happy that at least the time spent getting ready so they wouldn't think she was pretty. Only in photos was worth it. Yang runs her hand through her hair. Outside the classroom, a group of students was staring at her. Then she noticed the person next to her. Seeing that they were sleeping, Wondering who would do that right on the first day of school, she was going to let it go, but remembers something Yang thinks that the back of his head gave her a familiar feeling. Questioning if it was strange to think that this head belonged to an idiot. Surprised, she looks forward. It turns out that the teacher had arrived and asks everyone to sit down. The students obey, going to their seats. The teacher introduces himself as Younghan Ban, responsible for first-year class 3. When a student started talking, the teacher promptly told him to shut up. The man complains about the boy sleeping, telling them to wake him up since it was only the first day of school. The red-haired boy calls him, repeating for him to wake up. The young man gets up, trying to understand what is happening. Yang sees this and immediately realizes who it is. She stands up from her chair, pointing at the young man and shouting. The student remembers her and almost speaks of his memory of seeing her taking a picture with her feet, but the girl promptly covers his mouth. Ki-sung is left without reaction, and Yang extremely irritated. Everyone stares at this whole scene that just happened. The teacher asks what those two are doing. Laughing and awkward, Yang steps back. Ki-sung slaps her hand, complaining about the taste in his mouth. Siwon excitedly questions if they know each other. Embarrassed, she says, no, lying by saying that it was the first time they were seeing each other and that she had mistaken him for someone else. Ki-sung asks if that was really it, pointing out that he thought they had already seen each other somewhere. He turns to look at her. Yang was starting to get nervous. An awkward silence lingered through the classroom. The boy next to her says that he probably saw her on Instagram since she was super famous there. The teacher asks if that was something similar to an old Korean TV show. Not recognizing the name, the students laugh. After all, that was from at least 10 years ago, calling him old. Realizing that everyone's focus had shifted to someone else, Yang feels relieved and sits down. But the tension between the two was obvious, especially with the girl making a point of staring at him. The girl thinks, almost crying, that she can't believe that out of all people, she's in this class with this idiot. Then questioning why God abandoned her, slamming a notebook on the desk, the teacher explains that even though some troublemakers were sleeping on the first day, at least no one was absent. Looking at the class and observing everyone present, he notices that the girls and boys were each on one side of the room. The teacher asks who had marked the Berlin Wall, 38th parallel in the middle of the room, pointing out that the kids want to segregate by gender nowadays. A female student is shocked by the question. Siwon asks what the word segregate means. Ki-sung answers that it's when men and women avoid each other, although he points out that no one really uses that word nowadays. The teacher says he will draw lots for the seats so they can become friends more quickly. Besides, he would choose a boy and a girl per pair, with no exceptions. A boy agrees, probably sucking up to the teacher. A female student asks how that could help them make friends. Another girl replies that he's probably doing this because he was old. Still in the classroom, Yang was holding a paper with the number 23. Irritated because not only was she sitting next to Ki-sung again, but she was even closer now. She questions why he was there, which the young man retorted, pointing out that he was number 24. With a grimace on her face, the young girl curses, wondering how this was possible. Yang is surprised to see him show his paper, while Ki-sung says that people like her only believe in evidence. The protagonist promptly raises her hand, shouting for the teacher, saying that since her eyesight was bad, she would like to change seats. She hears the bell and the teacher was already gone the next second. In her mind, Yang wonders if the boy would spread rumors about that day or something like that. Ki-sung observes her from the corner, while the girl can only think that none of this makes any sense. He remembers the earring that had fallen the day they met at karaoke, but when he was about to ask about it, Yang gets startled, saying she has no idea what he was talking about, with an irritated expression that said if he mentioned anything about that day, he would be dead. Yang notices something on her phone. It turns out the red-haired boy from earlier had started following her on social media. Behind her, the young man calls her, explaining that friendships that start at the beginning of the semester become mutual, asking her to follow him back. The protagonist says that she will definitely do that. Siwon is surprised by the huge number of followers Yang had, saying that he was dying of envy. Right after, several people start to approach asking the same, almost overwhelming her. Seeing all that, and that her desk was about to become as crowded as the São Paulo subway during rush hour, Ki-sung stands up and walks to the door. Siwon asks that before he leaves, he should give his account name to everyone, which he replies that he doesn't have. The red-haired boy questions why Ki-sung just answers that he simply doesn't have time for things like that, and doing it would only throw away the little time he had. Everyone freezes upon hearing his opinion about that being a waste of time. Yang thinks the boy was nothing more than arrogant for talking like that. A girl approaches her, asking what lipstick she used the other day, the day she went to a cafe, pointing out that the picture was great. Turning, Ki-sung sees Yang surrounded by people, pointing out that she acted totally different when she was at school. Some girls point out that they thought she would be much colder and more distant, since besides being an Instagram star, her mother was still a Miss Korea. A student is surprised, asking if he was the only one who didn't know that. Another points out that Moron apparently lived underground all this time to not know something like that. A female student says her name was Hira Chai, adding that her mother told her she was very famous years ago, and when you search on the internet, she comes up right away. While Yang smiled, someone says that her genetics were impressive. However, a person in the back says that when her mother was younger, no one expected that she would become so beautiful. Yang is left without reaction. She realizes that everyone around was only talking about her mother and her followers. People kept talking until Ki-sung calls her. He was staring at Yang without saying anything. The girl next to him asks what it was, which he answers, saying that this was his seat. The girls apologize and leave his desk. Both stay quiet for a second, and Yang starts to think. She remembers the boy saying that when her mother was younger, no one thought she would become so pretty. That phrase pounds in her head. Desperate, she opens her phone. With her heart racing, she scrolls down the comment section. The bell rings. The girl was still immersed in her own world, thinking that it was fine. This was who she was now, her current version. Out of nowhere, she heard someone calling her. And shocked, she realizes it came from Ki-sung. Young asks what it was. The boy explains that at this rate, her phone would be confiscated. Nervous, she quickly hides it, wondering where the teacher had come from. In her mind, the protagonist wonders if just now he had helped her with all that suffocating situation. Laughing, she thinks probably not. An idiot like that guy would never do it. She notices his socks, seeing a rabbit. Yang thinks that this doesn't really match his personality, questioning if he likes cute things. Anyway, she gives herself the task of trying to find a boyfriend, wondering where she would find someone handsome and with a good heart who would be perfect for her. Yang thinks that she would definitely start looking outside her own classroom. In the cafeteria, the girl watched everyone passing by. Attentive, she checked them one by one. When she found someone minimally attractive, she managed to lose interest right away after seeing him eat. Approaching a second-year class, she thinks that was the place where Namshin Kim studied, then asks a student to call the boy. Claiming that a teacher had called him, the student agrees and Yang waits hidden behind the door. A boy comes out of the class. Asking who had called him, Yang notices the difference between the photo and reality, and realizing she had been tricked by half a kilo of editing, she turns back. Walking back home, she thinks that today was a total failure. Sighing, the young girl believes she's not asking for the moon or something complicated like that. She just wanted someone a little tall, a handsome face, and a nice body. And even though she wanted to win the lottery, she thought that was still asking too little. The girl notices that several people were gathering in a store, several girls saying how handsome someone looked. Curious, she tries to enter the crowd. All of this just to see Ki-sung in yet another one of his jobs, and with his arm totally proportional, by the way. Surprised, Yang asks what the hell he was doing there. Ki-sung looks at the window. Scared, the protagonist leaves the crowd. Embarrassed because their eyes had met, the girl questions why her heart was beating so fast. A little later, Ki-sung was at home, and his brother asks if he was wearing the socks he had given him as a present, then asking if by any chance he was now getting better presents from his girlfriend. Ki-sung asks what the hell he was talking about. Smiling, the child holds the earring in one hand. Surprised, the young man asks how he had found that. Ki-sung explains that he found it in his drawer, questioning if he had finally gotten a girlfriend. Ki-sung replies that nothing of the sort happened. It was just something a customer had dropped during his last shift. Hye-sung jokes, saying he thought he had finally managed to escape eternal single life. Embarrassed, Ki-sung asks where he had learned to talk like that. His phone rings. Answering, he sees that it was his boss at Yang's house. She looked at herself in the mirror. In her memory, Ki-sung's face comes to mind. The girl shakes her head, trying to drive the thought away. She splashes water on her face, asking for it to wash all those thoughts away. The doorbell rings and her mother says that some delivery orders had arrived. Annoyed, Yang questioned why they had asked her to be the one to pick everything up. The delivery man wearing a helmet hesitates a little. When the delivery man was thanking her and wishing her a great day, Yang notices the socks he was wearing. She freezes for a second, then starts laughing and desperately asks if it was Ki-sung Jo. Taking off the helmet, he explains that he had no idea this was her house, calling her tow girl at the end. Ki-sung asks her to enjoy her food and turns to leave. After closing the door, the protagonist stays there for a second, completely still, and screaming internally, she turns and looks at herself in the mirror. Her mother suddenly comes singing a song about chicken opening the bag. The woman complains, saying that they had said they had added another portion of pickled radish. pointing out that they shouldn't say all that about a special celebrity bonus if they couldn't deliver it. Meanwhile, Yang freaks out and screams with everything, embarrassed about how she had answered the door. Kisung rode off on his motorcycle, and when he remembered her expression, he smiled. The next day, Yang looked at herself in the mirror and thought she couldn't sleep. Her dark circles around her eyes were already almost at panda level. She asks if Kisung is some kind of Robin Hood or something, because everywhere she goes, the boy is there. The girl asks if he was the only one who could really deliver food to her house at that hour, wondering how she would face him at school tomorrow. Already at school, Yang looks out the window and is left speechless when she realizes he hasn't arrived yet. Someone behind asks her why she was talking about him. The girl turns around startled, and when she tries to run to escape, he pulls her by the strap of her backpack. Yang doesn't understand what just happened. Kisung calls her Toe Girl again, and she gets irritated, asking him to stop with that nickname. The red-haired boy arrives, asking what was that and what was going on between the two of them. So early in the morning, Yang gets startled, then asks where he came from, mentally hoping he hadn't heard their conversation from just now. The young man asks what they were talking about. Kisung says it was nothing and pulls him. With Shiwan under his arm, they start walking to their seats. Approaching other students, the red-haired boy greets them, combining the words, "Good morning" and "hello." One of them replies that 2 greetings in one wasn't normal and that he should just greet people normally. Shiwan tells him to shut up and just accept his hello. Yang thinks that every time she meets this guy, something embarrassing happens. During class, she was extremely bored. Her mind only wandered about yesterday's events and the selfie incident, wondering if Kisung had told anyone about it. Shocked, the girl wonders what to do if there are already rumors about her. The bell rings, class is over. Surprised, the protagonist hears someone behind her talk about feet. She instantly spins around. It was just Shiwan commenting on the size of some classmate's foot. Let's momentarily ignore the boy sitting next to her. Since he was wearing a suit and shorts at the same time, Kisung thinks that's kind of rude, while Yang smiles awkwardly. When a girl from the class went to talk to her, for some reason Yang thought she was going to ask about her feet. Apparently, she was still a little disturbed by all this. In the end, the girl just wanted to show them a regular episode of a series she liked. Shiwan leans in and asks Yang what Kisung meant earlier, mentioning something about feet. Yang laughs nervously, trying to cover it up, and says he must have misheard. The boy insists, stating that he heard Kisung talk about feet. Yang, in panic, diverts the subject, offering something to the boy to make him shut up. She thinks quickly, deciding she needs to stop Kisung from spreading anything. The girl turns around, wondering where he was. Kisung closes his locker with 1 foot, and before she realizes, Yang was next to him, staring at him. When she was about to speak, Kisung interrupts her, stating that they need to talk. The girl doesn't understand. In what seemed to be a storage room, she wonders what they were doing there. At least no one would be able to hear their conversation again, like last time Kisung asks if she had lost something recently. Yang thinks for a while, then jokingly says she lost her dignity. The young man stays serious, so she answers again, explaining that she doesn't think she lost anything. Kisung extends his closed hand, and Yang looks confused, imagining if he wanted her to headbutt his hand. Honestly, with each second that passes, Yang seems to have fewer neurons. She does it, for some reason unknown to humanity, maybe because of the loose screws in her head. Confused, Kisung asks what is wrong with her. Laughing, Yang asks if she misunderstood. The boy opens his hand, then she realizes it was her earring. The young girl is surprised to see that again, while Kisung remained silent. Earlier, in the conversation they had, Kisung had left the earring in his pocket since there were several people around, and during class he didn't get an opportunity. Since she looked more like a zombie than anything else, Kisung thought it was simply too difficult to give it back to her. Yang asks where he had found her earring, which he explains he found on the karaoke hall floor. She laughs gratefully, but then reality hits, and she remembers that many things happened that night, and she was there precisely to ask him to keep quiet about it. Yang starts to talk about that night, but Kisung says there's nothing to worry about. After all, he wouldn't tell anyone and also didn't plan to do something like that. She is surprised, not understanding. For some reason, the girl gets nervous and takes a step back. She bumps into a chair which ends up knocking over the one on top, and when she was about to fall on it, Yang screams, breathing heavily and with dust in the air. The girl then realizes that Kisung had pulled her out of the way. He asks if she was okay. Blushing, she is left without reaction. Back in the classroom, Kisung was sleeping again. Yang is surprised to feel her heart beating so fast, thinking it could be a terminal illness. She stares at him. Shiwan appears, asking if he was sleeping again, questioning what Kisung must do at night to be so sleepy like that. Yang thinks that he slept too much, and then is startled to realize she was writing this in her notebook. She was just in denial at the moment, right after tearing the paper. destroying the evidence of the crime. Nearby, someone laughed and asked when the other girl should stop denying what she felt, since her brain said no, but her heart pointed yes. The girl retorts, explaining that just because you heard some sounds from someone, you're not necessarily called a fan, so there was no reason to insist on joining the fandom. Another student says she was the only one who hadn't seen when the background had fallen, which the girl replies whatever, just to make them stop bothering her. The protagonist thinks that she couldn't be liking him. After all, that wouldn't make any sense. Despite that, when turning and seeing him sleeping, she feels as if she were taking a punch to the heart. Ki-sung gets up and pointing to her nose says that she was bleeding. While the girl blushed, blood dripped from her nose. She let out a small scream when she realized it. At night, Yang was running in the park. Out of breath, she slows down gradually. Laughing, she thinks out loud that she didn't actually like him, just his face, pointing out that she always had bad taste for guys with handsome faces, and that was all. Looking at the lamp, the girl thinks that the light was good for a selfie. In the reflection of her phone, Yang sees a young man. She realizes it was Ki-sung. In the end, they had met again. Yang stares at them for a while, him and the child. Ki-sung was smiling, very different from the moody boy she remembered. That surprises her. And even from so far, it really hit her that deep down, maybe she could like him. The two start to leave Yang feeling the distance between them increase. Sensing someone, Ki-sung turns, with his brother in his arms. But there was no one there anymore, which he finds strange. It turns out the protagonist had hidden by instinct, an action she herself ends up questioning the reason for. The girl goes back to watching them, and they finally leave. Back at her house, Yang was lying in bed. She vividly remembers that smile, thinking that she had never seen him make that kind of expression before, also wondering if that child was his brother, denying the possibility of being his son. She blushes with embarrassment at all of this. Her parents were talking while watching that. The man says that her condition seems worse than usual. Seeing her red face, he questions if she had gotten sick. Her mother explains that this is normal during puberty, giving the example of a famous Korean musical with the title, Everything is Red in Adolescence. But it turns out she even got the name wrong. Congratulating her husband for correcting her, Yang suddenly gets up, which leaves both without reaction. The girl says that there is a person who makes her nervous every time she is near him, pointing out that when he smiles, it looks like 100 fluorescent lamps light up on his face at the same time. She asks if that was love, her father agreeing almost immediately, while her mother was still shocked. Excited, Che asks if her daughter had finally managed to get a boyfriend. Yang replies that it was more or less that her mother doesn't really understand, but the young girl explains that she still hadn't made her feelings clear. But it was only a matter of time, Che yells, saying that this is just unrequited love, far from a relationship. The words weigh down on Yang irritated. The girl yells, pointing out that her mother wasn't helping at all, and kicks her out of the room. Yang slams the door. The woman complains on the other side of the door, saying that this girl was even kicking her own mother. Now turning off the light, she thinks that having an unrequited love in her place would be totally ridiculous. Throwing herself on the bed, Yang thinks it was time to go to sleep. Already lying down, she is bothered by something. Turning, she comes across a hallucination of Ki-sung lying beside her. The girl gets startled by this, and when he smiles, Yang immediately turns red, shaking her arm to erase the apparition. The next day, still at her house, she brushed her teeth, realizing she had dark circles around her eyes again. Looking to the side, Yang realizes she was still seeing the same illusion from yesterday. And when Ki-sung smiles, irritated, she shakes her arm, thinking she's starting to go crazy. The girl thinks she's starting to see him everywhere since last night, heading to school. Obviously, she was going to run into him again. Annoyed, she questioned why right now, simply telling him to go away. But when she tries to push him off, she realizes what she touched was solid. The girl freezes for a second, then questions if he was really real. Ki-sung asks what she was doing. Embarrassed, Yang thinks that this was really the real version. She apologizes and, cursing mentally, starts to move away. In the classroom, several students were talking. Meanwhile, Yang only thought that since she hadn't been able to sleep at night, her makeup didn't stick properly. Hoping no one had noticed, Ki-sung enters the room. Two students sitting on the cabinet greet him, asking where he had gone, which he only replies that he went to the bathroom. The protagonist turns away, avoiding contact. The red-haired boy says he saw him last night with a small child, asking if that could be his younger brother. A girl approaches, questioning if he really had a brother, and the red-haired boy says yes, pointing out that the boy was very small and very cute. Interested, the girl asks how old he was, and Shiwon asks if he was in kindergarten. When Ki-sung was about to finish answering, Yang put a bag on his head. He just stood there while the young girl was extremely embarrassed with that. Finally, it hit her that she did this in front of the entire class. Yang starts laughing nervously. When she put the bag on Kisung's head, her only thought was that she didn't want other people to see him smiling. But what she got was everyone staring at her, not understanding anything. Kisung continues static in the same place, and she just tries to make up an excuse, saying it was just a zombie game. Yang asks if they had never heard of it, explaining that it was a game where the tagger wore this on their head and tried to find the others as if they were a zombie. She says it was really fun. They should play together, but in her mind, she knew this was just a lame excuse. To her surprise, Shawan says that it sounded really fun. The boy says he loves this kind of thing. Grabbing the bag, he says he will be the zombie first. Putting it on his head, Shawan asks how this works, wondering if he should just start. Everyone notices a noise at the door. Making a sound imitating a zombie, he starts the game, only for the teacher to see him acting like a child while all the other students were seated. The teacher calls him to see him outside. Then, the teacher reads a passage from a book, asking what figure of speech that was. A student replies that it was Paradox Young, questions why the young man explains that it was because it made no sense to call her beautiful and dangerous. At the same time, all the students follow the reading, only Kisung was distracted. Looking at Yang, he thinks that she was an extremely unpredictable person. The girl starts sweating because she realized he was staring at her, wondering if he had noticed her intention with that zombie game story. She thinks her neck hurts. When the bell rings, she leaves immediately, just before he asks about the veins in her neck. The red-haired boy asked what had happened for all that hurry in the girl's bathroom. Massaging her shoulder, the protagonist thinks that if he wanted to smile, she shouldn't stop him. She questions if they were probably talking about her in the classroom, due to her strange behavior lately. But Yang didn't want others to see it. She wanted his smile only for herself. When she was about to leave the bathroom, the girl hears someone talking about her and freezes in place. A student says she heard that Yang was in class 3, and another explains that she didn't understand why they were making all this fuss about her, asking if she wasn't just a pretty face, pointing out that there were many like her in elementary school. Her friends agree while putting on makeup. One of them comments that all the kids were crowding in front of the school because of it on the first day, almost making her die of laughter. Another comments that it was a pain all those people blocking the hallways. The third girl says they should just leave it that way, since apparently Yang seemed to be enjoying all this. They comment that they simply hated how Yang acted as if she had always been pretty, pointing out that the young girl had probably done plastic surgery all this time, taking advantage of the fact that her mother was a big celebrity. A metal noise echoes in the bathroom, a trash can went rolling. While the three tried to understand what had happened, a person enters and says that apparently even trash can talk. But apparently, it hadn't been this one now that had said something. Not understanding what happened, the girls leave questioning what was wrong with her. While the girl washed her hands, Yang slightly opened the door. She saw that it was Terry Yoon. Back in the classroom, Yang approaches the girl from earlier, thanking her for everything, which the student doesn't understand. The protagonist explains that yesterday Terry had given her a handkerchief when her nose was bleeding. Terry says she didn't need to worry about that. Kisung enters the room and comes across a peculiar scene. Shawan was complaining because the girls had abandoned him and sat without him. Terry listened expressionlessly while Yang just teased the boy. When Kisung sat down, which startled her a little as if she had turned into a robot, the girl says she needs to get the music book, which Shawan found strange, since they didn't have that class today. But before he knew it, the girl had already run out, leaving him doubtful about why Yang had been acting so strange. Kisung notices something under his desk. By evening, Yang was coming back home by bus. Playing with her phone, the girl thinks she was acting like a loser, getting all excited with herself like that. Yang wonders why Kisung didn't have a social media account, explaining that at least that way they would have something to talk about. After all, she didn't even know a single hobby of his. Then, something on her phone catches her attention, finding a photo of him while working in a cafe, apparently taken by a customer. In the end, someone had created a hashtag to tag him in photos while working. Seeing this, she realizes that these photos were very spontaneous, laughing at the thought that he looked like a celebrity, ignoring the fact that he apparently hated photos taken without permission. Yang saw that the photo was from just 5 minutes ago, thinking that this cafe was about to close. So she asks the driver to let her get off right there. Walking through the city, the protagonist starts to look for the store, seeing Kisung talking on the phone. Apparently, his boss had suddenly gotten appendicitis, so he was a little too busy, and therefore couldn't pick him up for at least 3 hours. He asks if the person could make an exception, but apparently their answer had been negative. Understanding that it was probably about his younger brother, Yang approaches. She taps his shoulders, and when he turns, Kisung realizes it was his classmate. Yang explains that she could go pick up his brother in his place. Kisung asks where she came from, and what she wanted with that. The girl explains that since Kisung couldn't go get his brother now, she could do it for him. He questioned her motive for doing something like that. Yang explains that older people said that in the end, one hand washes the other, basically saying that Kisung would end up owing her one. Sighing, the young man asks her to forget it. He had no reason to ask her for such a favor, but apparently he was quite hesitant to call his uncle. Going in front of him, Yang insists that since this was very important, she could help him. He explains that he needed a reason. That wouldn't be enough. He stares at her for a second. Shy. Yang turns away. The girl points out that she was just trying to help. They hear a voice from the back of the store shouting at Kisung, complaining about how much longer he was going to keep talking. Irritated, an employee appears, complaining that he said he would return right after a quick call. Seeing him next to Yang, the worker gets completely stressed, asking if he was leaving because of all this nonsense. When Kisung says no, the man orders him back to work. Seeing the situation, Yang asks if she could send updates about the boy's condition while staying with him, since Kisung apparently didn't trust her. He agrees, but soon is surprised by something. Yang asks for his number, since she needed to keep updating him on everything. In his message, Kisung says he only needs just 3 hours. She writes that he doesn't need to worry, while walking down the street humming. Laughing mentally, Yang thinks that if she managed to get along well with his brother, at least she would have an excuse to meet him more often. That way he would gradually fall in love with her. The child looked at her with a sulky face. Yang was already at the daycare. Bending down, she explains that she is his brother's friend and was here to pick him up. The boy retorts, pointing out that his brother didn't have friends. She thinks he probably knew his brother well. Kisung feels a strange sensation. Yang keeps talking, explaining that she really was his friend. And since his brother would be late because of work, she would take care of him for the next 3 hours, pointing out that after that, he would come like the Flash. The boy explains that his brother had told him to never follow anyone who said something like that. The girl is left not knowing what to do. Luckily, the teacher says that she really was his brother's friend. It turns out that Kisung had just called explaining that his brother should spend some time with her. A little shy, the child gives in. In a nearby restaurant, they both enjoyed a meal together. Yang said she needed to send him an update, so she would take a small picture to send to his brother. She takes a photo and sends it. She comments that he probably hears a lot that he looks very much like his brother. Kisung replies, "Not really. His brother said he looked like their mother, while Kisung looked like their father." The girl is surprised to hear this. She thinks out loud that probably their parents work late and his brother is responsible for picking him up at school. The boy replies that his mom and dad are already way up in the sky, along with the other stars. Yang is surprised and apologizes, explaining that she didn't know that when she had spoken. The child replies that it's okay. His brother had told him that their parents being with the stars was not a reason for sadness. After all, they were watching and taking care of him at that exact moment. Yang smiles and says that he was really nice, just like his brother. The boy notices something. Looking at them through the glass, it was Yang's mother. She thinks that was very scary, and her mother starts walking. Upon entering the store, the woman asks what in the world Yang was doing there. The protagonist replies that she was just sitting. Che explains that she was referring to the fact of her wandering around late at night after class. Even though she was in the middle of the scolding, seeing the child, she gets distracted, asking who the little boy was. When the protagonist explains that he was just her classmate's brother, her mother simply throws herself at the boy, thinking he was the cutest thing in the world. Later, Kisung was finishing his work and taking out the store's trash. He says he's heading home. While finishing, the boy wonders if his brother had behaved. When he was about to call Yang, his phone rings. Answering, Kisung sees it was her. Yang asks if he had already finished work and that he should meet them. Arriving at the building, the young man realizes it was bigger than he remembered. Yang apologizes by message, explaining that it was all her mother's fault and sends her address. He thinks mentally about Block 301 and Unit 1006. Kisung remembers he had already been here to deliver something for delivery, trying to orient himself. He sees a strong man carrying bags dripping blood. A little scared, the boy turns away, but the man seemed to be walking in the same direction as him. The elevator reaches the floor and the door opens. He presses the button for the 10th floor and the doors start to close. But someone puts a hand on the door just before that happens. The man who had scared him earlier enters. Kisung gets a little anxious about this. After all, the man looked more like a murderer than anything else. And he hadn't even pressed a button after entering. When the doors open, Yang was outside. All dressed up, she asks how the two had arrived here at the same time. The two stare at each other for a second, not understanding what she meant. Already inside the house, everyone was together. When Yang's father was about to speak, Che interrupts him, stating that he was a very handsome classmate. The woman says that with her experience, he looked a lot like an idol, explaining that he probably should hear things like that all the time. That left Yang quite embarrassed. Being polite, Ki-sung thanks them for taking care of his brother while he was away. Chae invites him for dinner, pointing out that the boy probably hadn't managed to eat because of his work. Ki-sung points out that that was exactly what had happened, finally asking where his brother was. Yang replies that he was in her room. Opening the door a little, they see him sleeping on the bed. Ki-sung calls him, asking him to wake up, but only gets a grunt in response. The young man explains that they have to go home, but his brother only says he is sleepy and would sleep right there. Yang points out that she doesn't mind if he sleeps a little longer. Ki-sung calls him again, and the boy finally gets up, complaining that he was awake and would already do it. Leaving the room, they both notice something. Yang's father was cooking fervently. Entering the kitchen, Ki-sung apologizes for the inconvenience while Yang looks disappointed. The man slams the knife on the table, which scares the young man. Yang's father explains that he brought a freshly slaughtered pig home today, stating that they should eat before leaving. Still shocked, he and his brother agree. Ki-sung was amazed by the banquet in front of him. His brother complains that he was talking too loudly, and in the end thanks for the food. Ki-sung scolds him, telling him to eat slowly. Yang watches the brothers' relationship, while the young man points at him to also eat the vegetables. She feels a little embarrassed, knowing that her heart was racing, seeing him being so sweet and caring with his brother. The child stared at the already empty plate. Ki-sung smiles. Embarrassed, the protagonist ate, trying to hide it. Someone puts a piece of meat on the plate. Ki-sung is surprised to see this. Chae asks him to eat as much as he wants. The boy thinks for a moment, but soon starts eating. Later that same night, Yang and the two brothers were walking together. The girl looks at Ki-sung, who had a serious expression. She mentally questions why he was so quiet. It was driving her crazy at this rate. Yang would end up going home too quickly, which she wanted to avoid, forcing herself to think of something to break the ice. The girl then pulled a conversation out of nowhere, asking if his mother wasn't really pretty. She explains that when she was younger, people mocked her, saying she didn't look anything like her mother's beauty. Realizing her mistake in bringing up such a subject, Yang gets embarrassed. Ki-sung says that she was also pretty. That leaves her speechless, just staring at the young man. Thinking that the girl hadn't heard, Ki-sung repeats what he had said. Yang just stands there, paralyzed, looking at him under the moonlight. Even with such a good atmosphere, obviously they would be interrupted by Ki-sung's younger brother asking what they were doing. The protagonist gets startled for a second. The two stare at each other for a while, until the boy pulls his brother by the jacket, pointing out that they should go. However, Ki-sung was too small to be able to pull him like that, so he ends up stumbling backwards. Yang manages to catch him in time before he fell. She asks if he was okay, and Ki-sung asks him to be more careful. The boy quickly leaves her arms. Apparently he was a little jealous of her, so he clings to his brother's leg. Ki-sung asks if he shouldn't thank her for that. Since Yang had prevented his fall and was worried, he stays silent and his brother calls his name. The girl says not to worry about it, and Ki-sung says he usually didn't act like that, finally asking why Ki-sung was acting like a spoiled child today. The protagonist explains that the two must be tired today, so they should go home to sleep a little. After all, it was also late, which he agrees with. Ki-sung asks his brother to say goodbye, and the boy nods his head. Yang asks him to be careful and to visit them again. The boy starts flailing his arms, and Ki-sung picks him up, saying goodbye, and telling her they'll see each other tomorrow. Thus, the two turn and leave. The girl waved at them, the boy looking sideways. She doesn't understand at first, but soon he sticks out his tongue, thinking that the child was pretty clever and had probably noticed what was happening. Stretching, Yang states that this won't be very easy. Already at his house, Ki-sung was playing with his phone in bed. He sent a message thanking her for everything, and is surprised to see a message from Yang mentioning that her mother thought Ki-sung was so cute that he could go there whenever he wanted. She explains that the woman had always liked babies and would have liked to have had 3 children. She had probably given up on the idea, only because Yang ruined her expectations. Ki-sung smiles reading this. The boy freezes just before sending a goodnight message. The child asks if that earring from that time belonged to that girl. Ki-sung is surprised and asks how he knew. Ki-sung explains that he saw them in her room. His brother explains that she had dropped it at his workplace and later he had returned it. The boy simply makes a sound. Thoughtful, Ki-sung doesn't understand. Then asking if the boy didn't like her, especially because he had acted very distant earlier. He also points out that it was only thanks to her that they had eaten that delicious dinner. The boy gets embarrassed and states that his brother didn't need to know. The reason Ki-sung smiles, and then both lie down again, wishing each other good night. The next day, at school, Yang was playing with her phone. Ki-sung pulls his chair, wishing her a good morning. She jokes, saying that if he couldn't pick up his brother again today, he could leave it to her again. The young man just explains that this probably won't need to happen again. Yang asks, Why the boy explains that his boss was talking about an opportunity to give him some rest. After all, it seemed that they were going to close the cafe soon. She is disappointed to hear this. Ki-sung sighs, then Yang asks if he wouldn't have to look for another part-time job now, which, not very excited, he agrees. The girl says she saw a post saying they were hiring in her neighborhood, asking if she could check about the jobs for him. Ki-sung is surprised, asking if people post job offers on social media. Yang replies that obviously yes, and she could even send it to his number. He explains that she didn't need to do that, but it was already too late. Yang had just sent it. The girl explains that the company would send a response soon. Her phone rings, and for a moment the young man hesitates. She explains that they asked if Ki-sung could go to an interview still today. The boy was extremely surprised at the speed of this. Later, Ki-sung leaves a building and Yang asks what they had said. The young man explains that they wanted him to start working already next week, which the girl celebrates. Then, the protagonist asks if she doesn't deserve his thanks. Ki-sung doesn't understand for a second, but smiling, he soon agrees, stating that the girl had done a good job. He pats her head, which makes her embarrassed. In his mind, the boy thinks that she is like a puppy wagging its tail for compliments. Meanwhile, Yang was having butterflies in her stomach, feeling great. She mentally wonders if the boy might like her too, which obviously was just her misinterpretation. A phone rings, and in her hand it is revealed that it was a daycare. By evening, both were running out of breath. Ki-sung sees his brother in front of the building and is happy to call him. However, the boy was attentively watching a mother picking up her son. The young man pauses for a moment. Yang realizes what is happening. After all, both had lost their parents. Ki-sung notices the two on the other side of the street. The boy suddenly seemed about to cry, which leaves the two teenagers not knowing what to do. Crying, he runs into his brother's arms, who apologizes for being late. However, Ki-sung dodges, hugging Yang instead of him. While holding her skirt, the child asked for his mother, which left her very confused. She really didn't know what to do. Ki-sung was static seeing this whole scene. She hugs the boy, who was still crying. Later at night, Ki-sung was sleeping in his bed, with the two sitting by his side. He apparently had a very heavy sleep. Yang, seeing this, gets up, saying she was already leaving. Ki-sung states that he will accompany her to her house. On the way, both were silent, not knowing how to act after all this. The boy breaks the ice, pointing out that he never thought his brother would act like that, because her scent reminded him of their mother. Surprised, she asks if their mother also used products from a specific brand, which makes Ki-sung stay silent. Meanwhile, the young man becomes a little introspective, explaining that he scolded him for being rude, but probably Ki-sung was acting like that because of her scent. Ki-sung points out he hadn't noticed, since he can't pay much attention to his brother because of work. Hearing all this, Yang starts climbing the steps. Looking at the boy, she asks him if he knew how he appeared right now. The protagonist explains that he looked like a supermom, which left him quite confused. Yang points out that he looked like those mothers who worked all day and still apologized for not being able to take care of their children as much as they wanted, explaining that it was really difficult because of his jobs. She continues, saying that since Ki-sung was a brother instead of a mother, he should be like a super brother instead. The girl was sure it was very hard work for him, but despite all the service, the young man shouldn't blame himself so much, because besides that, he was a great brother. Then, patting his shoulder, she says that Ki-sung should lift his head and move forward. The boy smiles and agrees. Meanwhile, Yang thought that she always had a hard time every time he smiled, pointing out that her heart wouldn't survive at this rate. The girl had been putting on a poker face this whole time to hide it. In her mind, she thinks that maybe she was just deluding herself, but she realized that Ki-sung had been changing the way he treated her. Maybe, just maybe. The next day at school, Ki-sung places a chocolate bar on the desk. The girl asks if that was for her shy. He thanks her for the night before and says it was a payment. Yang thinks she was right. The young man had really changed the way he treated her. Walking through the school, the girl was next to Terry Yoon-young sees Ki-sung playing soccer, for a second doubting if he perhaps had friends to do that with. The boy notices her watching and then waves to them. Embarrassed, Yang squeezes her juice tightly, blushing and questioning if that smile could really be real. Delirious while thinking that it was so refreshing to her mind, wondering if perhaps he was some kind of human sports drink. Terry says it's the first time she's seen him smile like that. Yang hits her shoulder, having also thought the same thing. Out of nowhere, the protagonist starts a big cliché, explaining that she had a friend that a boy always smiled at her and once ended up patting her head, thinking she was cute. Right after, Yang asks what that could mean. Terry replies that he often did that with her Mango. Yang asks, surprised who that was. The girl promptly replies that it was the name of her dog. She then feels embarrassed for having asked that Terry asks if her friend wanted to know whether the guy was interested or not. Yang agrees, Then Terry asks if they could watch a movie together or something like that, explaining that if they went out together or something similar, that would reveal if he felt anything. The girl thinks she has a point. The boys start cooling off after the game, including Ki-sung, who poured an entire bottle of water on his hair. Looking forward, he is surprised to see Yang watching him. The girl asks if he was interested in seeing the movie, just the two of them. Still a little confused, he replies, "Yes." The protagonist is surprised that he accepted so easily. Ki-sung asks if she was free Saturday morning, pointing out that he would have a break from work, and his brother said he would bring friends to their house. Yang asks if he had any problem with that, since it would be just the two of them alone for a while. Ki-sung says it's fine for it to be just the two of them. Already in the city, Ki-sung was walking down the street and notices something. Picking up his phone, he sees that Yang had sent a message saying she was already at the place and that they would meet inside. He replies that he was already arriving. Yang points out that she had already bought their tickets, so they wouldn't have to worry about seats. Ki-sung thinks he's been owing her a lot lately. Someone behind him calls his name. He turned around surprised. Already at the cinema, Yang was waiting anxiously. While checking if her outfit was in the right place, she thinks she couldn't believe they were going to watch a movie, just the two of them. It really felt like a first date. She imagines the two of them sitting together, and then, in the next instant, they would be holding hands looking deeply into each other's eyes. Her mind goes crazy with this whole scenario. The protagonist takes a selfie and posts it immediately. She notices Ki-sung in the corner and calls him from behind him. Siwon appears. Yang freezes, stammering his name. The red-haired boy comments that when she was dressed like this and outside school, the girl really looked like her photos on social media. She asked his reason for being here. Ki-sung explains that he had met his friend earlier and he said he was going to watch a movie. And with all that happening, Siwon also wanted to come. She stared at Ki-sung, totally helpless. The boy just comments that since he wanted to watch too, they ended up coming together. Siwon explains that he really wanted to watch a movie recently. Yang forces a nervous laugh. Trying to push Ki-sung away, Yang says that he could watch that movie, while the two of them would see another one, hoping he enjoys the film and goes back home safely, being careful with cars and people. Siwon states that he will watch the same movie as them, since he was never very good at choosing. The protagonist cursed in her mind. Already in the movie theater, Yang was extremely disappointed. After all, the boy had ended up right between them, and besides that, he scared too easily, spilling all the popcorn on her. In her mind, she couldn't even refer to the boy without swearing. Looking at Siwon, he had a totally exaggerated expression. While Ki-sung just seemed attentive to the movie, Yang sighs. Leaving the movie theater, Siwon states that the movie was great, pointing out that it was so scary he had lost half of his life expectancy. He continues saying he never imagined Yang would choose that kind of movie and was surprised that she hadn't screamed even once. The girl mocks, asking why he watches movies like that when he doesn't have the stomach for scary things. Siwon explains that sometimes you need to watch this kind of thing to distress, like sweating in a sauna. With a terrible expression, Yang mentally questions why the boy simply didn't go to a sauna instead, almost going crazy trying to deal with him. The red-haired boy finally asks if the two were on a date or something like that, wanting to make sure he hadn't ruined anything. Awkwardly, the protagonist denies it. Changing the subject, she quickly asks if he wouldn't be busy, to which the boy replies that he's free. Annoyed, she questions how he has nothing to do. Shouldn't he be, I don't know, helping his parents on the weekend? Cleaning the house? Or even studying? Siwon simply ignores the whole lecture and asks if they're up for having a nice, juicy meat lunch on him, and Yang quickly agrees to the free food. At the restaurant, our protagonist is completely excited, taking pictures of her dish as if she had even forgotten about what happened earlier today. Until Siwon breaks the silence and asks Ki-sung if, by any chance, he has a girlfriend. He says that some girls from another class asked him about it, since Ki-sung always disappears as soon as classes end, creating rumors that he's supposedly working himself to death to support his college girlfriend. The poor guy doesn't even have time to answer that he doesn't have a girlfriend, because Hyeji already interrupts, saying that this is the biggest lie she has ever heard, especially because a college woman wouldn't date a high school guy. With everyone calmer, Ki-sung explains that he doesn't have a girlfriend and isn't interested in getting one right now either. Hearing this, the protagonist is shocked and asks for the reason. Calmly, he simply replies that he doesn't find it strange at all, because he just wants to embrace singlehood. Siwon is also confused by the answer and asks if Ki-sung is really choosing to be single. He quickly agrees, shattering all the remaining hopes Yang had. Ki-sung adds that, in truth, he doesn't have the time or the freedom to think about dating right now. Besides, he isn't interested in dating, asking Siwon to pass the message along to those girls who are interested in him. Still trying to recover from the shock, Hiji can't even bring herself to say a single word. And we'll stop here, everyone. I'm absolutely loving this super cute story, full of twists and emotions. What do you guys think? If you like it and share it a lot, I'll bring the continuation. I really felt bad for the protagonist, poor girl. All her plans went down the drain, and now at the end she even got a bucket of cold water thrown on her. Will Ki-sung finally realize his feelings for Yang? Or is it really just friendship and she'll be stuck in this unrequited love? Tell me your theories in the comments. The work is called Crush of Lifetime, and it was recommended by you guys in the comments, so I hope you enjoy it a lot. I even went up to chapter 16. Kisses and see you next time.